relationship between humans and nature can and should be a symbiotic relationship. When we deepen our connection to the natural world, we begin to foster a sense of kinship and reciprocity with nature. Because from our bones to our breath, as humans, we are a part of this living, breathing planet, and we have a responsibility to be stewards of this place. And as stewards, when we help the land heal, we can also receive healing from the land in return. My name is Blake Ellis, and I am the Ecotherapy Program Manager for a program that works in partnership with the Wellcat Counseling Center and the university's ecological reserves. Beacer is the Big Chico Creek Ecological Reserves, and it lies on the ancestral land of the Mechoopda Maidu tribe. It's this beautiful piece of land where they do work to restore and protect our critical native habitat for local flora and fauna. And they also work to produce research and education so that they help to produce the new generation of land stewards that are going to protect our local landscapes for generations to come. Well, I remember the first time I went out to the Big Chico Creek Ecological Reserve, and it was actually for a wildflower walk. And it has just provided so many different opportunities to not only learn about our native landscape, but also to engage with it and to build a relationship with the land.
My name is Eli Goodsell. I'm the director of the CSU Chico Ecological Reserves. We manage just over 8,000 acres of diverse ecosystems, which makes us actually the largest reserve in the CSU system and the second largest in all of higher education in the state of California. We use this 8,000 acres to promote land stewardship, from academic support and research to putting prescribed fire back on the ground as a natural disturbance. My role as the director here is really to ensure that we continue to meet our mission and vision for the Ecological Reserve, and really, and just make sure that we're working with partners, including our local tribes and communities, to really be innovative in the way that we look at land stewardship. Not only within our 8,000 acres, but use those 8,000 acres to then influence land management and land stewardship throughout California and the American West.
My family has lived in the greater Chico area since time immemorial. I'm Gila Ramirez, and I'm the cultural steward of the Beacer. So the Mechoopda tribe is the tribe that is indigenous to the Butte Creek watershed and the Big Chico Creek watershed. So the Beacer is on Mechoopda territory, and we have occupied and stewarded and managed this land since time immemorial. The Beacer's involvement is that they recently signed a memorandum of understanding a few years ago. With that memorandum of understanding, a collaborative relationship has been cemented, and the two entities have been working together to facilitate greater involvement of the Mechoopda tribe on the Beacer.
As part of that MOU, we were excited to support our first ever cultural steward position, which is a paid position within our ecological reserves that helps us prioritize our relationship with local tribes and really use some of the indigenous knowledge and practices in land stewardship, which they had done in time immemorial on this landscape, and having that influence the way that we do work, and as well as teaching that next generation of land stewards that come through our program.
One of the first things that the Beacer had me do as the cultural steward when I got hired on is to develop a mandatory cultural training. I developed this three-hour holistic training that is mandatory for every single new hire at the Beacer. They learn about the historical trauma and the genocide that happened to not only the Mechoopda people, but the local tribes in Butte County. And they learn about TEK information that was provided by the Mechoopda tribe, and also land management practices that are relevant to our work that we do today. I am trying to implement certain parts of the MOU which will allow Mechoopda tribal members to do certain activities on the Beacer. I will also act as a liaison with the Mechoopda tribe, which is our local partner, and local natives in the local area to bridge areas that might need bridging to further the goals.
I think the biggest challenge facing Beacer is the risk of catastrophic wildfire. As we've seen so much of our county burn in recent years, that is going to be always a threat. However, I'm really hopeful about those risks as they've been doing amazing work with putting good fire back on our landscape and helping people repair their relationship to fire and understand why fire is a necessary part of our ecosystem.
We are in areas that would naturally burn through and cycle through every 3 to 7 years that are now growing for 100 years without a natural disturbance happening to them.
Our reserves have had numerous fires go through them. This is a fire-adapted landscape, so by starting small fires, we can actually prevent big fires, big catastrophic wildfires like the ones that we've been seeing lately.
We work to put it back onto the landscape more in line with the way that indigenous people had for time immemorial.
My people, as well as all California natives, we use fire to make the land more healthy while also producing more resources for ourselves. An example of this is using fire to promote straight shoot growth of plants. You need long straight shoots for a lot of things, such as basket weaving. Not only would this allow us to use plant material for baskets by burning, but it would also facilitate plant growth by getting rid of pests and pathogens that may infect the plants.
We see areas at our ecological reserves and throughout the region where we do prescribe fire, where after a burn we'll have native species coming in that haven't been seen there for 20 years.
Plants like manzanita and buckbrush actually need fire for regeneration. Their seeds won't sprout unless a fire comes through. To be able to go to a burned area and to see all of the wildlife, all of the birds and everything using that area, I think is a very valuable lesson to show the resilience of the fire-adapted landscape.
So we really are trying to get back to that stage where we are using fire as that natural disturbance, where we can kind of get our forest back into that more natural fire regime cycle in a safe way, using science and the skills that we have as wildland firefighters to be able to return fire to our landscapes that desperately need it. So, we recognize that fire is that natural disturbance and that it is not only our role but our responsibility in stewarding these lands to put that natural disturbance back into the system in a safe way to protect our communities, but also to provide the habitat that our animals and ecosystems rely on.
After the 2018 Camp Fire, Eli, the Ecological Reserves Director, wanted to do something to give back to the communities impacted by the fire and knew that the land, and Beacer specifically, had a vital role to play. In 2019, Beacer received funding from the North Valley Community Foundation's Butte Strong Fund for the Forest Therapy for Community Recovery pilot project. This project certified 15 local mental health professionals and community leaders as forest therapy guides with the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy in order to serve individuals and families impacted by the Camp Fire. Several of the certified guides were Camp Fire survivors themselves, and the practice of forest therapy has been pivotal in helping our communities heal after trauma and reconnect with ourselves, each other, and a dramatically transformed landscape.
So the biggest thing that we've really been focusing on for the public recently is the forest therapy.
So forest therapy is inspired by the Japanese practice of Shinrin-yoku. That translates literally to forest bathing. Forest bathing is not a cultural or a spiritual practice, but this practice was developed in Japan specifically for human health and wellness. In the 1980s, Japan was going through a tech revolution. Folks were moving out of the countryside and out of these forested and rural areas and into cityscapes. The government began to notice immense rises in preventable and autoimmune diseases. Things like diabetes, heart disease, cardiovascular disease, even things like anxiety, depression. So essentially, the Japanese government decided to fund a series of research projects. One of those research projects simply asked the question, what happens when humans spend time in natural or forested environments? And what they discovered was pretty profound. The first thing that happens is that it activates our parasympathetic nervous system, and essentially it helps us recover from stress. Our adrenaline and our cortisol levels drop dramatically. They've even discovered that things like creativity, focus, attention, even academic performance improve when people spend time in forested or natural environments. Trees and other plants are constantly emitting these things called phytoncides. Phytoncides are a type of phytochemical that are antimicrobial, antibacterial, and antifungal. Trees and other plants constantly emit these phytoncides in order to keep them healthy, protected, and safe against disease that might otherwise kill the tree or the plant or make them very ill.
We are guides, and the forest is the therapist. And this is a new thing that I spent 6 months getting certified in with a number of other people.
I think having that opportunity to teach the public, have an outdoor laboratory and place for the public to gather has been a remarkable amenity for the community. The university initiated this program. They sponsored our cohort, but it's kind of spawned some, I would say, some entrepreneurial approaches to things. So our district, Paradise Recreation and Park District, we're actually the employer of the guides that are teaching Chico State students. And we're providing the home for the guides to provide this service to Chico State. And I think it's been a really beneficial partnership. And what we hope for is that it not only helps Chico State students, but as we go further along, that they get that, the guides get that experience, and we have programs that we can offer the public. So it's really, think of it as a seed, right, that's starting on campus here, but it's gonna help grow and mature and help benefit other parts of the community as well.
Since I got certified, there's a lot of interest from patients because they hear my story and the benefit that I report as a cancer patient, the levels of anxiety and fear and disconnection to your own self, because being diagnosed with this and engaging in all the treatment, it really shapes you to be someone else. So it's kind of a grief for the person that you used to be.
What a forest therapy walk or experience looks like is a certified guide will take you to some place in nature, and we offer a series of invitations. We call these invitations very purposefully because there's no right or wrong way to engage with an invitation that a guide offers. And so that means people can adapt and modify an invitation to however feels safe and comfortable for them. It's one of the main reasons that makes this practice trauma-informed. It's all about slowing down and experiencing the natural world in that present moment. After an invitation, we do what is called a sharing gathering or a sharing round. It gives us these beautiful opportunities to really listen to each other. You know, in regular conversation in everyday life, we'll kind of ping pong back and forth. And so oftentimes in these conversations, we're just waiting for our chance to talk or thinking about what we're gonna say. But in these sharing gatherings, we have the beautiful opportunity to really open our hearts to what is shared. And it's all about enhancing that sensory experience of the natural world and opening our hearts to each other and our community and to the environment around us.
After experiencing this mindfulness in nature with everybody, I feel very grounded and at peace and honestly motivated to do this more. I don't do this enough with school and stuff like that. So nature is a perfect place for me to use all of my senses and to just take a little chill pill and just kind of breathe from a deeper place and just heal in a sense.
When I engage in a forest therapy walk and I'm practicing it, first I'm reconnecting myself, I'm stopping my mind, I'm stopped thinking about work and all the things that are in my head all the time. This connection, deeper connection with nature, is just how you relate and connect with your senses to nature and how that experience feels like. I don't have much experiences or moments in my daily life to sit around with people and really talk from my heart, being vulnerable, and really say the things that are happening in my life. And that's how I choose to show up to the group. But when you're in the group and people start opening up, you have this sense that you got to really know who they are. And it's very wonderful. It's a beautiful experience. But we are particularly interested to work with kids and the people who lost their homes. There's this whole idea of trying to help them reconnect with the land.
I think particularly for anybody that's survived a natural disaster, there's a lot of feelings about the relationship you have with nature. As a campfire survivor, I was in that space of needing to find meaning to kind of move through the suffering. And forest therapy was one way to kind of slow down and notice things that around me and how things were changing and growing back and moving away from the disaster.
And I think that nature and forest therapy gives us a chance to provide that beneficial dose to people in a 3-hour block, a modest block. As we travel through our lives with not only things related to the campfire and those efforts, but all the other things that happen, pandemic, life stress, there's an opportunity there to help people with their coping skills and ability to know themselves out in nature.
We've seen campfire survivors come through, and there was one in particular that came through and said that after their walk, 3 years after the campfire, their forest therapy session was the first time that she was able to feel wind on her face and have it be relaxing and invigorating instead of triggering, which to me, providing that assistance to one person was huge.
A lot of my biology classes were hosted on the Beacer for outdoor field trips. And within that place-based context, I learned how to apply biological theoretical concepts to the real world. And that was my first introduction as a student.
Among environmental scientists, the vast majority, at least of the people that I know, got into the field because they love the environment and spending time outdoors. And in my case, at some point I figured out you could do that for a career, and the rest is history. When we talk about the environment, it's impossible not to talk about climate change. So I guess I just like to reinforce that among scientists, it's not divided, right? It's 99% of scientists agree. Climate change is real, and it's caused by humans. End of story. So I think it's really important for the next generation to learn about this kind of environmental work, because they're the ones that are going to inherit the earth, right? So the more that they can learn about what's actually happening, climate change is kind of portrayed in a doomsday way a lot of the time, but as scientists, really, we're just out there to try to put numbers on it, right? Like, what is actually happening and what do we think will happen? So if you can get anybody, right, even one student, exposed to the outdoors, realizing that there's a career to be had in studying this and putting those numbers on it, right, that can then be used to make policies to make the world a better place, then I absolutely think that's worth it.
We have about 1,300 fourth and fifth graders that will come each year to the ecological reserves, and students in the Department of Education will actually be interns or paid positions with us that are putting on outdoor programming and outdoor classrooms for fourth and fifth graders, as they're the next ones that will be coming into Chico State, going into other institutions of higher education, and will truly, at a young age, learn the opportunities and the excitement of doing good work in our natural environment.
So my name's Ann Stevens. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Science Education here on the Chico State campus. And I'm also the director for the Inland Northern Science Project on campus. And for the past 2 years, I've been working with the Big Chico Creek Ecological Reserve as their director of development for environmental ed programs. Children especially, going out on field trips in the last few months with kids, they can't self-regulate. They haven't been in school. They haven't been able to be outside and running around and playing with their friends on the playground. And there's something called vestibular disconnect. Their levels of stress build up to the point where it impacts their ability to feel comfortable in their space. And it's a direct result of trauma. Letting them walk on fallen rocks or logs, or jumping from rock to rock, or walking on an uneven surface helps to restore those proprioceptor connections to the brain. And it actually makes you feel more connected. It can actually heal the trauma that kids have experienced by being isolated from their friends, losing their communities when people moved away. It actually physiologically has an impact on kids' brains.
So I coordinate the outdoor education programs, including our outdoor classroom, which is field trips with mostly elementary school age kids and some a little bit older. So we bring them to our reserves for field trips and teach them about the local ecology. So they get introduced to a wild area where we do have bears and mountain lions and coyotes and bobcats. I really like to introduce people to the kind of the research and why this place is so special, and hopefully develop that sense of stewardship in the land and a sense of connection with the land.
So I really like going to Beacer with students because it's such a wonderful place for teaching. We're in a canyon, it's a transition of ecosystems, we're in the foothill areas, and it is just so pristine and so biodiverse, right? And then I also really like going to Beacer to teach part of the Big Chico Creek watershed tour. So the Big Chico Creek watershed is all the land that is connected to the creek. Water is life. It connects all the living things that are within this piece of land, right? So a watershed sustains the entire terrestrial ecosystem as well as the aquatic ecosystem. So it's not just about the fish that live in the creek or the larvae or the fly fish, the flies that live in the creek. It's also the trees, the grasses, and the animals that live on the land that is making up the watershed. And so this is a 4-day class that takes students from the headwaters of Big Chico Creek, where the creek starts, all the way to where it enters the Sacramento River. And in the middle of this trip is Beacer. And so we do a 2-day camp. We stay there overnight. We learn about all the different aspects of the watershed, focusing on Beacer.
The dominant paradigm views humans as separate from nature, and this disconnect has had devastating consequences for the health of our environment and the health of our human and more than human communities. The more we slow down and cultivate an intimate relationship with nature, the more we recognize our responsibility to protect and steward the land. By providing these services to our community, we hope to inspire and foster that healing process by putting humans back into that reciprocal relationship.